The fluorescent lights of Patterson hardware hummed with a tired, mechanical buzz, the kind that faded into the background once you'd spent enough years in places like this. Cole barely noticed it anymore. His life had become a collection of practical sounds. The scrape of wood, the whir of saws, the soft breathing of his daughter asleep down the hall at night. Noise that meant survival. Noise that meant routine. He stood in the fastener's aisle, one knee bent slightly as he balanced his weight, scanning the shelves for the right size screws. Harper was beside him, small fingers clutching the edge of his flannel shirt, her sneakers leaving faint half-moon prints in the sawdust tracked in from the lumber section. She was humming, not a song exactly, just a wandering melody, off-key and unstructured, the way children hummed when their minds were busy elsewhere. Cole felt it before he consciously registered it, that familiar ache behind his ribs. Rachel used to hum like that when she concentrated, folding laundry, reading recipes, standing barefoot in the kitchen at midnight, stirring soup while rain tapped against the window. 2 years gone, and the echoes still lived in his chest. He reached up, fingertips brushing a cardboard box of wood screws, when a voice cut through the aisle chatter. "Hello, sir. My mother has a tattoo just like yours." The words were soft, polite, certain. Cole's hand froze mid-motion. For a fraction of a second, his brain refused to process what he'd heard. It felt like the way the world goes silent right before a car crash, the moment suspended between normal and disaster. "What?" slipped out of him, barely louder than breath. The box of screws tipped forward, slid against his fingers, and fell. The sound was sharp and final as it hit the concrete floor, metal skittering in every direction. Harper jumped. "Dad!" Cole didn't hear her. He looked down. A little girl stood a few feet away, hands folded neatly in front of her, posture straight in a way that felt taut rather than natural. She couldn't have been more than 9. Dark curls framed her face, held back by a velvet headband. Her dress was navy blue with a crisp white collar, too pristine for a hardware store, too expensive to be accidental. And her eyes, his breath caught, green, the exact same shade as Harper's. She lifted her hand and pointed, not rudely, not dramatically, just matter-of-factly, toward his wrist. His sleeve had ridden up when he reached for the shelf, exposing the tattoo he almost never thought about anymore. A phoenix, wings spread wide, one wing fractured, lines uneven, imperfect. A bird learning to fly again after breaking itself against the ground. The tattoo wasn't from any shop. No professional artist had ever touched it. It had been sketched once, on a napkin, in a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and rain-soaked coats. 2 people bent over the table, laughing, arguing over the angle of a wing, believing with the reckless certainty of youth that love was stronger than distance. 10 years ago, the night before she disappeared. Cole swallowed hard. "What did you say?" His voice came out rough, scraped raw from a place he hadn't visited in years. The girl didn't flinch. "My mother," she repeated carefully, like she was used to adults not listening the first time, "has the same tattoo. She never shows it, but I saw it once." Time slowed in that strange, unbearable way it does when life decides to change direction without asking permission. Cole became aware of everything all at once, the hum of the lights, the smell of paint and pine, the distant clatter of a dropped can echoing down another aisle. Harper's small hand gripping his elbow. Behind the girl, footsteps approached. Fast, sharp, expensive, the sound of heels clicking against linoleum. Cole's chest tightened. He knew that sound. Some memories don't fade. They hibernate. They wait in your bones until the right moment wakes them up. "Iris." The voice came out strained, breathless. "Iris, where did you?" The sentence cut off. Cole turned slowly, and there she was. 10 years had changed Genevieve Hartley, but not in the way he'd imagined during the long nights when memory refused to let him sleep. The sharp-edged art student with paint-stained fingers and wild ideas had been refined into something polished, almost dangerous. Her dark hair was shorter now, cut into a severe bob that framed her cheekbones. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. But her eyes, those were the same. That storm gray color that had once reminded him of October skies right before rain. They were wide now, caught between recognition and fear, like a deer frozen in headlights. Cole. His name left her lips like a confession. Like a curse. Like the final word of a prayer she'd been whispering for a decade. Genevieve. Saying her name felt like pressing on an old scar. Not sharp pain, something deeper. A reminder that it had never healed properly. Harper shifted closer to him, sensing the tension, her small body leaning instinctively into his leg. Iris looked between the adults, confusion beginning to crease her composed expression. Genevieve recovered first. She always had been good at that. I apologize, she said smoothly, her voice slipping into polite distance like a well-worn coat. Iris, we need to leave. Now. But, Iris looked back at Cole, then down at his wrist again. The tattoo. Now, Genevieve repeated, sharper this time. She reached for Iris's hand. But Iris didn't move immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, studying Cole with open curiosity. The kind children have before the world teaches them caution. Are you the one from your story? Iris asked suddenly. Genevieve went pale. Cole's heart slammed against his ribs. What story? He asked, barely louder than a whisper. Iris smiled faintly, unaware she was standing on a fault line. The story about the two phoenixes. The ones who learned to fly together before the storm came. Something broke inside Cole. Genevieve's grip tightened around Iris's hand. She turned abruptly, practically pulling the girl toward the exit. I'm sorry, she said over her shoulder. We have to go. It was the same apology she'd given him 10 years ago. And then they were gone. The automatic doors slid shut with a soft, indifferent hiss. Harper looked up at him, her green eyes wide. Dad. Who was that lady? Cole stared at the doors long after Genevieve disappeared. His mind was already racing, counting backward, assembling pieces he didn't want to see fit together. I don't know, he said finally. It was the first lie of many he would tell himself over the next few days. That night, sleep refused to come. Cole lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. The familiar creaks and sighs that used to comfort him now felt too loud, too empty. Rachel's side of the bed remained untouched, just as it had been for 2 years. He hadn't moved her pillow, hadn't changed that part of his life. He closed his eyes, and saw Iris's face, the shape of her nose, the arch of her eyebrows, the stubborn set of her jaw that looked hauntingly familiar. 9 years old. The math was simple. The implications were devastating. The next 3 days passed in a fog. Cole functioned. He always did. He packed Harper's lunches, reminded her to brush her teeth, listened as she talked endlessly about school projects and imaginary kingdoms. He finished, measuring lumber for the treehouse they'd been planning since spring. He cooked meals, cleaned dishes, smiled when required. Inside, everything was unraveling. At work, his hands betrayed him. Measurements he could normally make in his sleep came out wrong. A custom cabinet joint splintered under his saw, the wood protesting his lack of focus. At night, memories surfaced uninvited. Genevieve laughing in that coffee shop, ink-stained fingers tracing lines on a napkin. The night she told him about the gallery opportunity in New York, excitement and fear tangled together. The promises they'd made, calls, visits, making it work, then silence, blocked numbers, emails unanswered, a disappearance so complete it felt like she'd never existed at all. He had grieved her, and then he had met Rachel. Rachel, who admired a rocking chair he'd built at a woodworking exhibition and stayed to talk for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Rachel, steady where Genevieve was storm, present where Genevieve had always been half gone. Rachel, who taught him what real love looked like. Harper had arrived 2 years into their marriage, red-faced and furious at the world, tiny fingers curling around his own. For the first time, Cole understood what his father meant when he said love should ground you, not unmoor you. Rachel's cancer diagnosis came when Harper was 4. 5 years, the doctors said. Rachel fought for 6. She refused bitterness. Refused. Why me? She made him promise to live after she was gone. To not turn into a ghost in his own house. He'd kept that promise. Mostly. Now Genevieve was back. And Iris. On the 3rd night, Harper found him in the workshop. He sat on the floor, an unfinished drawer in his lap, tears sliding down his face without him realizing they were there. The smell of cedar and old varnish filled the air. Harper didn't ask questions. She climbed into his lap, curled against his chest, and stayed quiet. I like that girl, she said eventually. Iris. Cole nodded, throat too tight for words. She seemed lonely, Harper added. Yes, he managed. Do you think we'll see her again? He didn't answer. Harper rested her head against him. I hope so. I've always wanted a sister. The words landed like a blow. Children saw truths adults tried desperately to bury. The universe, it seemed, wasn't finished with him yet. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in sunlight and the smell of ripe fruit. The farmer's market bustled with life, voices overlapping, children darting between stalls, vendors calling out prices like old town musicians. Cole walked slowly, Harper's hand warm in his, trying to convince himself that normal still existed. Rachel had loved this place. She'd taught him how to pick tomatoes by scent rather than color, how to press gently near the stem and listen for firmness. It felt strange to still be doing the things she'd taught him, like muscle memory refusing to let go. They stopped at a stall piled high with heirloom tomatoes, red and yellow and streaked with green. Cole bent slightly, inhaling the sharp, sweet scent. And then he felt it. That familiar tightening in his chest. He looked up. Genevieve stood a few feet away. She wore jeans and a simple white shirt, her hair pulled back casually, as if she were trying very hard to look like someone ordinary. She studied the tomatoes with the same intensity she used to give her paintings, head tilted, brows drawn together. No Iris in sight. For a moment, Cole considered turning away. Then his feet moved before his mind could catch up. Harper, he said softly, forcing steadiness into his voice. Go look at those pastries for a minute. Pick one for later. Her face lit up instantly. He pressed a folded bill into her hand. And she skipped away without suspicion. Cole stepped closer. We need to talk, he said. Genevieve stiffened but didn't turn. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. She finally faced him. The grief in her eyes struck him harder than anger ever could. It was old grief, compacted and hardened by time. Please, she said quietly. Just let this go. Let it go. His voice sharpened despite his efforts. She looks exactly like me, Genevieve. Exactly. And you run the second we meet. You don't think I deserve an explanation. Her jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? She asked. He lowered his voice. I want the truth. Is Iris my daughter? The question hung between them like smoke. For one terrible second, Cole thought she might answer honestly. Then something in her face collapsed inward, and when she spoke, her voice was flat, rehearsed. No, she's not. And even if she were, she continued quickly, what difference would it make? You have your life. I have mine. We're strangers who happen to cross paths. She stepped past him. Cole blocked her path. The tattoo, he said urgently. She knows about the tattoo. You told her a story. About phoenixes learning to fly together. Genevieve's composure cracked. Just for a moment. Pain flashed across her face so raw it made Cole's chest ache. I need you to leave us alone, she whispered. Please, you don't understand what's at stake. Before he could respond, a bright voice rang out. Dad, look who I found. Cole's heart stopped. Harper walked toward them, smiling, Iris beside her. Both girls held paper bags, crumbs dusting their fingers, eyes shining. Iris, Harper exclaimed. I didn't know you'd be here. Genevieve froze. Can she come play with us? Harper asked eagerly. We're building a treehouse. Iris looked up at her mother, hope written plainly across her face. Please. Genevieve looked between the girls. Cole watched 10 years of carefully built walls crumble in her expression. 1 hour, she said finally, voice barely audible. That hour changed everything. The girls bonded instantly. Laughter filled Cole's backyard as they worked on the treehouse frame. Iris handled the hammer with intense concentration, missing nails more often than hitting them, but refusing to give up. Harper guided her patiently, drawing plans in the dirt with a stick. Cole watched, heart heavy and full all at once. They moved the same way, tilted their heads at the same angle, bit their lower lips when focused. Sisters. When Iris's nanny arrived to collect her, Iris hugged Harper tightly, reluctant to let go. That night, Genevieve pressed a business card into Cole's hand. Come tonight, she said. After the girls are asleep. I'll tell you everything. At 8 sharp, Cole stood outside Genevieve's house, heart pounding. Inside, the truth poured out. She had been pregnant when she left. Terrified, pressured, trapped between ambition and fear. People with power had convinced her disappearance was the only way to protect her child. I never stopped loving you, she said through tears. I just didn't know how to be brave. Cole listened, grief and relief colliding inside him. By the time he left, the night felt different. He wasn't healed, but he wasn't broken anymore. Weeks later, the treehouse stood finished. 2 girls sat inside, laughing, planning adventures. Cole watched from below, sunlight filtering through the leaves. Life hadn't returned to what it once was. It had become something new. Something honest. Sometimes the past doesn't return to destroy you. Sometimes it comes back to give you the family you didn't know you were missing.